The lake had always been quiet, that kind of quiet that felt heavy, suffocating, almost unnatural. The locals in the Appalachian Mountains called it Black Hollow Lake, though it never appeared on most maps. Those who lived nearby claimed it had been forgotten on purpose. They said the water was cursed. They said the things that lived in its depths were better left unnamed. I didn't believe any of it when I first heard the stories. At the time, I was just looking for somewhere cheap to stay. While working a temporary job in the area, I found the listing online, a 2-story cabin sitting right on the edge of the lake, isolated, surrounded by pine and oak forest. The pictures showed a weathered wooden porch, tall windows, and a small dock stretching into the water. It looked perfect, almost too perfect. The owner never gave his name. He just said the place had been empty for years, that it needed someone to live in it. Keep it awake, as he put it. The price was unbelievably low, almost suspicious. But I was broke and desperate. I signed the lease within hours. The first day I drove up there, the sky was overcast. A fog clung to the tree line, curling in thin fingers around the road, as if the mountain itself was trying to hide what lay beyond. The gravel path twisted for nearly 2 miles before I caught sight of the cabin. It stood facing the lake, silent and still, like a sentinel watching the dark water. I should have felt excited. Instead, I felt watched. When I stepped onto the porch, the boards groaned under my weight. The key turned stiffly in the lock, and as the door swung open, a stale breath of air escaped the house. It smelled of damp wood and something faintly metallic, like rust or blood. Dust coated the furniture, the fireplace, the shelves. But there was no sign of rodents or mold, just emptiness. The first night was uneventful, at least at first. I unpacked, set up my things, and tried to make the place feel like mine. But as soon as the sun went down, the atmosphere shifted. The stillness outside thickened. The forest grew silent, not a single insect or owl calling. And the lake, it seemed to move. I sat on the porch with a beer, staring at the black surface. It was calm, too calm. Not a ripple disturbed the water, though a breeze rustled the trees behind me. I don't know how long I stared, but eventually I saw it. Something pale just beneath the surface, drifting slowly, like a body. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and it was gone. That night, I struggled to sleep. The bedroom overlooked the lake, and the window had no curtain. The moon cast its reflection across the water, silver and unbroken. At some point, I must have dozed off, but I woke to a sound, soft, deliberate, like footsteps on the porch. I froze, holding my breath. The steps moved closer, slow, heavy, creaking on the wooden boards. Then, silence. I forced myself to get up and check, my heart pounding. The porch was empty. The trees swayed gently in the night breeze, but nothing else moved. When I turned back toward the door, I noticed something strange. Wet footprints, small, bare feet, leading from the railing toward the door. and stopping right at the threshold. The prints were still dripping. The days that followed blurred together. Each night brought something new, something worse. The second night, I heard knocking from inside the walls, slow, deliberate knocks that traveled, as if something was crawling through the wooden beams, searching for a way in. The third night, I heard laughter, childlike, faint, carried across the water. I tried telling myself it was just the isolation getting to me. The brain makes things up when it's deprived of company, right? But the more I denied it, the stronger it became. By the end of the first week, I had stopped sleeping altogether. One evening, just before dusk, I decided to take the small rowboat tied to the dock and paddle out into the lake. Maybe if I faced whatever fear I had, it would vanish. The water was still, black as ink. Every stroke of the oars sounded deafening, echoing off the trees that loomed over the shore. I rowed toward the center, the cabin shrinking behind me. That was when I noticed it again, the pale shape beneath the water. Only this time, it was clearer. It was a woman. Her hair floated like dark weeds around her face. Her eyes were wide open, her skin gray and bloated, her arms reaching upward as though clawing at the surface. My blood froze. I yanked the oars, panicking, but the boat barely moved. She was directly beneath me now, staring up through the water, her mouth opening slowly. Bubbles rose, followed by a sound that wasn't possible underwater. A muffled scream, sharp and shrill. The boat rocked violently. I nearly capsized before I managed to row back, my arms burning, chest heaving. I didn't stop until the boat scraped against the dock. When I stumbled onto the porch, drenched in sweat, the cabin door was wide open. I know I had locked it. Inside, the wet footprints trailed across the floor again, but this time, they led into the bedroom. That night, I pushed a dresser against the door, refusing to let it in. But the scratching started almost immediately. Long, dragging scratches along the wood, and the whispering. It sounded like multiple voices, men, women, and children, murmuring just beyond the door. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was pleading, begging, and then the knocking started, not from the walls, from under the bed. I wanted to run, but I was frozen, paralyzed with fear. The mattress shifted slightly, as though something pressed against it from below. The whispering grew louder, rising into cries, sobs, screams. I don't remember how I got through the night. All I know is when the sun rose, the voices stopped, the bed was still, the footprints had dried, and I was still alive, but barely. The next day, I went into town, desperate for answers. At a small diner, I asked an old man about Black Hollow Lake. The moment I said the words, he grew pale. "You're staying at the lake house?" he asked, his voice trembling. I nodded. He shook his head slowly, eyes clouded with fear. "You need to leave, now. That place. It doesn't let go." When I pressed him, he finally told me the story. Decades ago, the lake had been the site of a small village. A flood destroyed it, drowning dozens of families. Some said the dam upstream had been sabotaged. Others whispered it was punishment, that the land itself rejected the people who tried to tame it. The bodies were never recovered. The lake became their grave, but the dead didn't rest. "They'll call to you," the old man said. "In the water, in the walls, they'll wear faces you know, voices you trust. But they're not people anymore. They're hungry, and once you've seen them, you're theirs." His words haunted me as I drove back. Every instinct screamed to pack my things and leave, but some invisible pull dragged me back to the cabin. It was as if the lake itself wouldn't let me go. That night, the whispers returned, louder, clearer. This time, I could understand them. "Come to us. Join us. It's so cold down here." I covered my ears, rocking back and forth, but the voices pressed in from every side. The smell of rot filled the air. The walls groaned and bulged, as if something inside pressed against them, trying to break free. Then the window shattered. I turned, and in the shards of glass, I saw them. Pale hands reaching through the broken frame, dripping with water, clawing at the air. Faces followed, gray and twisted, their eyes hollow voids. They climbed through the window, dragging themselves across the floor. I backed into the corner, trembling, as the first one lifted its head. It was the woman from the lake. Her mouth opened in a soundless scream, jaw unhinged far wider than humanly possible. The wind howled louder that night, almost like it carried whispers across the lake. I sat up in bed, my heart thudding, because I swore I heard the floorboards creak outside my door. The old lake house was ancient, its wood swollen from decades of storms, but this sound was deliberate, slow, measured footsteps. I reached for my phone, its faint glow lighting up my trembling hands. No signal. Of course not. Appalachia had always been the kind of place where reception died and legends thrived. I slid out of bed and pressed my ear against the door. Silence. Then, after a beat, a long, low groan came from the hallway, as if the house itself exhaled. The hall stretched ahead, bathed in shadows, the moonlight spilling through the narrow windows at the far end. Everything looked still, too still. I stepped out barefoot, each board cold under my feet, my body tense with every creak that echoed in the stillness. Halfway down the hall, I froze. There, by the stairwell, something moved. Not fast, not sudden, just a flicker. A figure almost blending into the gloom. A girl. She was small, her hair hanging wet down her face, her dress dripping water onto the wooden floor. But when I blinked, she was gone.